Hi there. Happy New Year. I'm Don.
And hello, Happy New Year. I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty, January 5th, 2013. I almost said 2012. Nailed it.
We made it.
We survived and nothing exploded on December 21st. And so far there's no war in the Middle East, at least not a new one. And thank you, Jesus, no new false flag terror attacks. And hopefully, as Benjamin Fulford always tells us, most of those guys are getting neutralized. So, although there is still a debate raging about gun control and Second Amendment rights, we wanted to take a little time out this week and talk about some things that we see that have tremendous potential to be a long-term solution. And we are declaring ourselves to be non-combatants, and we don't want to be perceived as threats by anybody.
Right, and that's not to be confused with the right of self-defense. Even though you can say I'm at peace with the Vatican and the New World Order and all the other so-called bad guys, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up your weapons. No, 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 no. For instance, I think I mentioned this last week, but it's worth mentioning again. Before there was any war, the armies would present each other with peace flags, in meeting, they would each carry a peace flag. So that doesn't mean that it just means you're not in a state of war, is all that means. And of course you should be prepared to defend yourself, even if you're not in a state of war. But I want to take a step back and say, both of us, but I'll speak for myself, really feel that there has been a shift, and we don't think we're just deluding ourselves. We see evidence out there, different blogs and things that we read that of course are not reflected in the mainstream media, or even people like Alex Jones. You have to go a little bit more off the beaten track. Removing the Shackles has gotten really active and is doing new things, and they're one of the mouthpieces of the stuff that is being picked up. There's also the whole Leo Wanta, Mitterrand, Reagan protocols, and that's on soldier hugs. There's that whole thing. There's also the stuff that's Fulford is reporting on his blog, benjaminfulford.net, and then there's Copy of Pele, which he mostly echoes some other people. But we really sense that that's the, I say that to say there's documentation, but we also, externally, but we also sense something internally that there has been a shift. And I'm really at the point now where I feel that the people that we've been calling the powers that be are really now the powers that were. And, to the point where I'll abbreviate it PTW, powers that were, instead of PTB, powers that be. It feels real to me, and part of that reality is recognizing that, and I mentioned this last week, but I want to broaden the scope of that discussion this week, and that's about the remedies that are out there, whatever you want to call them. Not really remedies, it's so comprehensive, it's much more comprehensive than remedy. It's the power structure of the world as we've known it has been fully recognized and is in the process of being taken down. And what that power structure actually is at its core is it's a global trust. And the Vatican has held that global trust, and the people have been regarded, and at the very top is what it is. And then underneath that there's been the British monarchy and the whole city of London, etc. And but even above and I've always considered the banking level to be the top of the power structure pyramid, the banking and legal system. But I always thought that the legal system was kind of there just to justify the banking system. Well, it's kind of the reverse. The banking system is a tool of the legal structure, and the legal structure of the global world system that has evolved from, and I'm not going to go into the whole history. Ken Cousins is just excellent on this, so refer to his stuff for that. But it's a global trust, and now what has happened is that the people have recognized that these legal fictions that have held the global trust are now, we can step into that as living human beings, and we can do that at a level above the legal fictions, because legal fictions are really just tools of living human beings, and the people of the planet can hold this trust. Now, I'm not going to say that there really, in theory, is really only one trust, but there's a few different manifestations of that I see at this point. But the concept is clear, and it's out there, and it's growing. It's growing by leaps and bounds, accelerating. There's the One People's Trust 1776.org, I think it is, and then there's also divineprovince.org. And the thing that I like about Divine Providence is it not only recognizes the trust aspect of it, but it also recognizes that it recognizes the things that are necessary to disengage yourself from the existing current system, the powers that were, so that they don't have ways to manipulate you based on false assumptions. And we have been manipulated based on false assumptions. So they presume that you're dead or dying, lost at sea, therefore they can exercise admiralty law on you, etc. And it just goes on from there. You're assumed to be an enemy combatant. So we rebut that by saying, no, I'm at peace. And things along that line which actually give you legal standing, and that's the key. In order to exercise your fully God-given rights as in the world as we know it, we have to have legal standing, or you don't have a leg to stand on, so to speak. So that's what's going on, and like I said, it's accelerating. But at the core, the issue is a one world global trust that had been held by the bad guys, by the people. They had said that, well, we're just being trustees. We know that at their core they're satanic, etc. So I don't make spiritual peace with those guys, but I do make physical peace in the sense that I'm not going to try to force them to go to jail even. I just want to be free, and we now have an opportunity to do that. This is really accelerating. So that's the key idea, is it's all about trust law and the people stepping into the trustee position in that law. The trustor is God, the trustee is we the people, and you can do that. Nobody's going to do it for you, so I really encourage you to find how you can best take hold of this.
So yes, a lot of it is about individual and personal responsibility. And Don first was explaining to me a few weeks ago about being at peace with about how the Jesuits explained to James McBride that they would be supportive of what he's doing. They've just been waiting for somebody to accept responsibility. And I just rejected that, to put it mildly. But then after I actually listened to James McBride and heard the ideas and had more of an open mind, because the first time you hear something, even if it's true, it's typical to have a negative reaction if it's off the beaten path of the ideas that you're used to having and thinking. So after I settled myself, processed, I realized that, to use an allegory from a film or a book, The Lord of the Rings, Denethor was, if you would use the term, a trustee of Minas Tirith. He was a steward. That's the word that's used in the film. And he was supposed to be waiting for a king to return. And in the process of his waiting, whether it was because he did not believe that a king would ever appear, he felt inadequate on some level, he was desperate to protect Minas Tirith, he entered into a relationship of sorts with Sauron. And I see that as a really good allegory for, if indeed these guys have been trustees, that they've simply been disloyal to the trustor who entrusted them and to the beneficiaries in a similar way to which Denethor was disloyal to Aragorn.
Right. I think that is such an excellent example, the whole Denethor as steward thing, and paralleling what's happened with these people at the high levels, like the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and all these people that are the New World Order. They may not have started out to be evil, but they bought into, probably progressively, and due to a desire for power, at first, of course, for good, just like the ring. I only want it to help men. You only want it to help, but it turns evil. And it's like that with power. So the One People's Trust is going to hopefully, and in whatever different ways that looks, the thing to emphasize is it needs to keep being decentralized. And what we need to do, and that diffuses that whole ring of power, attraction to power. We have to constantly think, how can we decentralize this? And especially with whatever monetary system we begin to come up with as people, as free people, that's the next big thing. How are we going to do this? But that's the operating principle, is keep it decentralized. The other thing that I wanted to point out was in James McBride, what he made the observation as he was going through this over a period of a couple decades, trying to figure out what the core of the system was before he boiled it down to the fact that it was all about trust law. Then he realized that you'll often hear, and I've said this myself many times, that these guys that are in these positions of power just do whatever they want. They're lawless. They're going to disobey laws. But the thing that McBride realized, and this is hopefully we'll be able to give you the link to this. That was in the show on Friday on Morning Liberty. Jim McBride said he realized that these guys are cowards. They won't just do what they want to do because there might be consequences. So they have to have something backing them up, and not just some scary tyrant behind them. There has to be some kind of a system. So if this scary tyrant changes his mind and decides to sell him off, he's got a leg to stand on. He's got plausible deniability, and really more than that. He's got a whole system that backs him up. And realizing that they're cowards and realizing that there was a system is what enabled him to continue to pursue the legal angles. So it is, that's another reason I feel really we've entered into something new, is that the code has been broken, so to speak. And not only that, but the reins and the beginning of it's been flipped. It's been flipped from the dark side to the light side. People don't see it yet. A tiny fraction of a percentage of people see this and are entering into it. And that's why we're telling you this now, so you can be about the business of saying, how can I plug into this? And we mentioned a few websites, but ultimately that's the key idea, is it's about trust law and getting your straw man or your franchise name, legal fiction entity recognized as being a legal fiction that's under your control, and that it's outside, this is the absolute key thing, outside the jurisdiction of the people that have set up their sub-trusts of this main big trust. With Divine Providence anyway, you have a way to get outside of that jurisdiction. So that's what you need to look for, is How do I come out of the system? This is the Babylon world system that's talked about in the book of Revelation, the beast. How can you get out? And there's now a way to do that, and we're excited about it. It's all about trust law.
That is really good news, and it's wonderful to have something to feel enthusiastic and optimistic about. One thing that Don mentioned in passing was the financial system, and this isn't our main point today, but I do just want to briefly mention the idea of peer-to-peer lending being something that will displace the banking system. And I saw one article about it this week, and then I also noticed a video wherein Max Kaiser is talking about peer-to-peer funding having a real potential to overturn the historical traditional banking system. And if you haven't heard a lot about peer-to-peer lending, we'll include Max Kaiser's video in our notes and on Pearls of Liberty. But just think George Bailey and his savings and loan in It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey as a character gives a tremendous explanation in the course of the film about what peer-to-peer lending is. And even though that was a savings and loan as a go-between, at that time those little savings and loans really just facilitated peer-to-peer lending. So there will be good things in the future pertaining to banking as well.
Yeah, that's great. It's not the George Bailey and the savings and loan example isn't perfect because George Bailey still had to go crawling to Potter. The deposit that was lost was supposed to go into Potter's bank, and the savings and loan was really within the existing power structure. And now we have a way to get out. We're just not sure what we're going to build yet, and this is really. It's going to be a wonderful creative period, and we're excited about it. It's going to be the best of times, worst of times. As the old comes crashing down, there's a lot of people that are going to be still trying to cling to the old, including the idea of, this is my enemy, I've got to keep fighting it. But it's really true that you become like what you behold, and if you're constantly beholding your enemy as an enemy, you actually become like that. And that's why, to use the Lord of the Rings analogy, you can't look into that, whatever that sphere is called, that
Palantir.
Not only the Palantir, yeah, because not only can Sauron see you, but you're drawn, and that with the use of the ring, and that any of their things that cause you to look on them, you become like them, and it's poison. So you want to begin to think about moving into a new world and beholding the world as it can be, not the way that it has been.
So we do thank you for joining us, and we are at peace with you, and we are at peace with the bad guys. We just aren't going to be looking into their eyes anymore. So have a great week.
And on that note, I'll say, see the world the way that it really is and the way that it can be. See yourself in it, walk your walk. You are the one you've been waiting for.